Hello, my furniture friends. Katie here from Salvaged by K. Scott. I am honestly just not in the mood to deal with a big involved furniture flip this week. So I thought instead I would take this time to work on 3 smaller projects that have been kicking around, collecting dust in the garage for much too long now. I'm going to be flipping these 3 mirrors. All 3 of these mirrors originally came with long 6 or 9 drawer laminate, kind of MCM timeline dressers that I've already made over and sent back out into the world. You know how it used to go when you bought a full matching bedroom suite from the department store. There was almost always a matching mirror that either bolted onto the back or hung above the dresser. That's just not how most of us decorate anymore. These days, a lot of us have either a TV or some artwork hanging over our dressers. So when we're flipping older furniture, the mirrors don't really add much appeal or value, and they usually just get pushed to the side. They tag along with their thrifted pieces, get stashed somewhere in the garage, and eventually, when we get tired of moving them around, they get donated right back to the thrift store or set out on the curb with a big free sign. I do have a couple of ideas for these swirling around in my head, but they're all kind of just theoretical at this point. I have no idea if any of them are going to pan out. This is going to be a little bit of an experiment in creativity. These don't have much of a backing on them, just a thin piece of cardboard covering the backside of the glass that's sitting inside the channel of the frame. So I think I have to take the whole thing apart to get the mirror out and clean things well. It looks like there's just 1 screw in each corner, so it shouldn't be too hard. Just like every other project I work on, I'm going to start by washing these pieces down with some simple green degreaser to get rid of all the dust and dirt that's built up on them, but also any waxes or old silicone residue from furniture polish that I don't want to grind down into the wood when I start to sand. I bought a bunch of these wooden half beads for a project last year and ended up changing my mind and never used them. So my plan for this frame is just to glue them on around the whole thing for a giant beaded trim look. I don't know if I have enough to go all the way around or if the spacing is going to work out nicely. I don't want to have any beads weirdly hanging over one end. So I'm going to dry fit this all first to figure that stuff out. 12, 14, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. See, I told you I was winging it. I actually need to put the mirror back in the frame, so I'll get that dusted off, put this back together, and then I'm just going to glue with some wood glue these beads around the frame. I'll mask off the mirror once it's set back inside the frame and everything's glued in place, and then paint it. Yeah. I should probably mask the glass off now so I don't accidentally scratch it with the sander. There's a little bit of a lip on 3 of the 4 corners where things don't line up perfectly. It was like that before I took it apart. So I'm just gonna sand that flush with some 80 grit sandpaper and then quickly scuff up the rest of the frame to give it a little bit of texture or tooth to help the glue hold better. I actually did this same thing on another mirror frame all the way back in 2022, and I sanded it all the way back to do a whitewashed wood finish. But I think on here, I'm gonna paint everything in a solid color, so I don't need to remove all of this dark gold finish. I gotta wipe all this sanding dust off with my damp microfiber rag, and then I can get to gluing. Wood glue, especially when you're gluing wood to wood, is super strong, so there's no need for any nails or extra fasteners on these. Once it's dry, they'll be good and stuck. I just need to keep them as centered on the frame and straight as I can. The spacing actually worked out really nicely for me too. If I just offset this one bead on each corner a little bit, everything fits nicely and looks purposeful. Okay, let's move this to the side so it can dry. This one is almost identical to the other one. It's just a little bit bigger. It's held together the same way, and it is maple with the same faux wood laminate sticker on top of the actual maple frame. I think I'm going to go ahead and take this one all the way apart as well, because I do want to sand back to the natural wood underneath here. And then I'm going to try a two-toned stain technique. I'm going to try. I've got some 120 grit sandpaper on here now, which should cut through this wood grain print and the brown primer layer that's under it. I'm not going to sand the ends though, where the frame pieces come together, because if I remove any material from those surfaces, things might not fit back together too well when I go to reassemble them. Okay, just gonna wipe these down with a microfiber cloth to pick up any extra sanding dust, and then decide what color I want my stains to be. These two cans were sitting beside each other in my paint cabinet, and they both have kind of a gray undertone, so I think this is what I'm gonna use. Flagstone and Briar Smoke by Varathane. What I'm hoping to achieve is a two-toned stripped effect. So flagstone, briar smoke, flagstone, briar smoke, flagstone, briar smoke, all the way around the frame. So I think I'm gonna do a base coat of the lighter color and then tape everything off with some masking tape, see if I can seal the edges somehow so that the darker color doesn't bleed underneath. I'm not sure if it's gonna work, especially since I want to go horizontally across the grain. It might, I don't know. This has been sitting in my cabinet for a while, so I definitely need to give it a good stir to get all the pigment and whatever else has separated and settled in the bottom of the can reincorporated. And then I can just wipe it over each piece. And since these are oil-based stains that I've chosen to work with, they take a really long time to dry. So I'm gonna need to leave this for at least a few hours before my masking tape will even stick to it and I can do the darker color. I'm going to screw these back together without the glass just so I know what I'm working with, and then measure out to find the center point on each section to start my taping. And I'm just going to use the width of the tape as the size of the stripes. This frog tape has a water-activated edge lock adhesive that does a really good job at sealing down the tape and keeping paints from bleeding underneath. But because the wood is porous, I'm a little worried that the penetrating stain is just going to get sucked in past my tape lines anyways. So I think I might be able to combat that by sealing the tape down and sealing up the wood pores a little bit with a pre-stain wood conditioner. It's basically a thinned out sealer that's used to help stains apply more evenly on woods that don't absorb the pigments very well. So fingers crossed it will do what I want it to do on here. All right, let's put on the briar smoke. Oh, that didn't soak in at all. So I brushed on the stain, left it for a minute or two, and then wiped back the excess, but I couldn't really see any color difference at all. I thought that maybe the pre-stain had sealed up the wood too well, so the pigment wasn't penetrating at all, but I just kept going all the way around the frame anyway to kind of play out my little experiment, I guess. Should probably wait, but I can't. I need to know. Oh, that's kind of cool. I did have a few spots like this where things bled up underneath the tape, but since I didn't wait for anything to dry before I peeled it off, I was able to just quickly clean it up with a paper towel. While that's drying, I think the glue is dry enough on the beaded mirror that I can prop it up on a table and get started painting it. I feel like this bubbly look could work really well in a lot of different spaces. It's a super popular design feature right now, but I feel like this would be great in a nursery or a girl's bedroom. I'm going to use up the last little bit of this pastel blue that I have called Little Whale. This paint is super easy to brush on, but spraying is quick and easy for me, so that's how I'm going to roll today. It does adhere really well to most surfaces, and it's got a built-in sealer, so even though I do usually use an additional primer and sealer when I'm using it on furniture projects, for this mirror, I think with 2 or 3 coats, the paint alone will be just fine. All right, this should be good to unmask. The paint is dry enough to peel back the paper and the stain is dry enough to seal now. I have a tiny bit of flat spray-on lacquer left in this can, so I'm going to use that up and hopefully have enough to get a few light coats over the frame before I unscrew it one more time and put the mirror back inside. This last one is kind of the odd one out. It's definitely framed differently than the other two. It has this kind of projecting piece on the bottom, and then the top just has this really weird, awkward piece of trim. I'm hoping that since it's not screwed together like the other two frames were, this top piece is all just stapled together, that I can use my circular saw to kind of trim off this awkward part and match the top strip to the sides. And then I think I'm going to paint it. All right, and then I can just clamp that to use as a guide to run the saw down. I'm going to give this one its clean now and scuff it up again. Okay, I got distracted and pulled away from this yesterday, but I was thinking last night that it does still look a little awkward with the protruding piece on the bottom. So I'm going to cut a scrap piece of 1x2 maple that I have and put that across the top as a matching cap to that base piece. And hopefully it will look a little more intentional that way. More intentional than the piece of baseboard across the top did anyway. Mr. Salvaged is using the nail guns in the basement, so I'm going to drill a few quick countersunk pilot holes right through the top, down into the sideboards, and just screw this on. Yeah, I think that just looks better proportionally. Okay. Again, I'm using up some bits and pieces of leftover stuff like the last few sprays of gray primer in this can. I mostly just want to put a bit of a seal coat over that completely raw piece of wood, but it won't hurt anything for the rest of it to get primed too. I've got a few fuzzy bits in my dried primer, so once I get this sanded smooth and dusted off, I can paint it. There are so many different finishes or colors that I could use on this frame, but I feel like a good stable satin black is always classic and easy to use in a ton of different spaces. And I have a few cans of emerald urethane enamel that have just a few ounces left in the bottom of them, so that's what I'm going with on here. This paint doesn't need an extra top coat either, so that's a bonus too. Before I can pop these up onto a wall in my house and show you what they all look like finished, I need to attach some hangers to the bags. These 3 mirrors all came along with thrifted dressers that I made over and sent on their merry way a while ago, and I've just been moving them around in the garage out of my way for months. There's just not a huge market for matching mirrors to stay with their original furniture sets, or flipped separately, to be honest, but that doesn't mean they can't still be updated or upcycled into something that can be used as beautiful home decor. I used a few of the leftover supplies that are also taking up space in my workshop, and now I've got these 3 totally different mirrors that I'd love to have hanging around my house, or I could probably sell on Facebook Marketplace to make a few extra bucks if I wanted to. I think the striped frame is my favorite out of these 3, but I'm curious to know which one is yours. As always, a huge thank you for following along with my projects. I so appreciate you keeping me company, and I'll catch you all next time.